Here's what nobody wants to admit. You don't need background noise to focus. You need it to avoid yourself. That's the uncomfortable truth. Underneath all those "I work better with music" explanations, all those coffee shop sounds, "help me concentrate" justifications, all those carefully curated ambient noise playlists. You're not optimizing for productivity. You're optimizing for distraction. Sophisticated, socially acceptable distraction. But distraction nonetheless. And the fact that you can't work without it anymore, that's not a preference. That's dependency. Let me show you what's actually happening. When you sit down to work in silence and immediately feel the urge to put something on, that urge isn't about focus. It's about discomfort. The discomfort of being alone with your thoughts. The discomfort of facing what comes up when there's no buffer between you and your internal experience. The discomfort of meeting yourself without distraction. Silence is uncomfortable because in silence, everything you've been avoiding rises to the surface. The anxiety you've been drowning out, the boredom you've been running from, the questions you don't want to answer, the feelings you don't want to feel. Background noise is a shield. It creates a layer between you and that discomfort. Not thick enough to prevent you from working, but thick enough to prevent you from feeling. And over time, you've convinced yourself that you need this shield to function. That without it, you can't concentrate, can't be productive, can't work. But that's not true. What's true is, without it, you can't avoid yourself. And avoiding yourself has become so habitual that it feels necessary. Think about how this pattern developed. You probably didn't always need background noise to work. There was a time when you could sit in silence and just do the thing. But somewhere along the way, silence started feeling wrong, empty, uncomfortable. So you filled it. And the more you filled it, the more uncomfortable the unfilled silence became. Until now, where complete quiet feels almost unbearable. Where your mind immediately reaches for something, anything, to occupy the space. Where silence itself has become the distraction. Because you're so used to noise. This is what constant stimulation does. It trains your brain to need external input to function, to rely on something outside yourself, to generate the conditions for attention. And once you're dependent on external input, you lose access to something crucial. The ability to generate attention from within. Real focus doesn't come from the right playlist or the perfect ambient sound. Real focus comes from the ability to direct your attention deliberately, regardless of external conditions. But you can't develop that ability if you're always leaning on external support. If you're always using noise to prop up your attention instead of learning to sustain it yourself. Here's what's really happening. Your brain has outsourced a function it's supposed to handle internally, like a muscle that's atrophied because you stop using it. The function is filtering, deciding what's relevant and what isn't, what deserves attention and what can be ignored. In silence, your brain has to do this filtering on its own. Every thought, every sensation, every impulse has to be evaluated and sorted. Important or not important. Now or later, relevant or irrelevant. That's work, hard work. And when you're out of practice, it's overwhelming. So you bring in background noise. And the noise does some of that filtering for you. It occupies part of your attention, so your brain doesn't have to work as hard to manage everything else. But here's the cost. You never rebuild that filtering capacity. You stay dependent, and the dependency gets stronger, because the more you rely on noise, the worse you get at working without it. The worse you get at working without it, the more you need it. And round you go, until you reach the point where silence feels impossible, where you can't imagine working, thinking, or even existing without some form of constant input. And you tell yourself, this is just how you work, this is your style, your brain type, your preference, but it's not. It's avoidance that's been normalised. Dependency that's been rebranded as optimization. By the way, our shared space of light and awareness is on its way to 100,000 people. Thank you to everyone who subscribes and brings this moment closer. Let's look at what you're actually avoiding when you can't work in silence. First, boredom. Real boredom. The kind that has no easy escape. The kind that sits with you and makes you face the fact that what you're doing isn't actually that interesting. Background noise masks boredom. It creates the illusion of engagement, even when the work itself isn't engaging. So you can keep doing things you don't actually want to do without feeling the full weight of not wanting to do them. Second, anxiety. The low-level hum of worry that runs underneath most of your waking hours. In silence, you hear it clearly. With noise, it gets covered up. Not resolved, not processed. Just covered. So it stays there, running in the background, draining your energy while you pretend it's not happening. Third, emptiness. The strange, hollow feeling that emerges when you stop moving, stop consuming, stop filling every moment with input. That emptiness scares people because it feels like nothing, like absence, like something's wrong. But it's not nothing, it's space. Space for your actual thoughts, your actual feelings, your actual self to emerge without being drowned out by constant external stimulation. And your actual self is what you've been avoiding. Because meeting it means facing things, hard things, uncomfortable things, things that can't be solved by finding the right productivity hack or ambient noise playlist. So you keep the noise running and you stay productive and you never have to face any of it until the dependency becomes so complete that you can't remember what it was like to work without it, to think without it, to exist without constant input telling you what to pay attention to. Here's the pattern. You sit down to work. Silence feels wrong immediately. You put on music or sounds or a podcast. The wrongness disappears. You work. You tell yourself, the noise helped. But what actually happened is, the noise prevented you from experiencing discomfort. And in avoiding the discomfort, you never built tolerance for it, never learned that it's safe, never discovered that you can work through it. So next time, you need the noise again, and the time after that, and the time after that, until I need background noise to focus, becomes identity, becomes truth, becomes unchangeable fact about who you are, except it's not. It's a habit, a coping mechanism, a way of managing discomfort that's become so automatic you don't even notice you're doing it. And habits can change, but first you have to see them clearly, see what they're actually doing, what they're actually protecting you from. The noise isn't helping you focus, it's helping you avoid. And maybe that's what you need right now. Maybe the avoidance is serving you somehow, but you should at least know that's what it is. So you can make a conscious choice. Keep the noise if you want, but know why. Know what you're getting and what you're giving up. Because here's what you're giving up. the ability to be with yourself fully, without buffer, without distraction, without constant external input filling the space where your internal experience should be. You're giving up deep focus, real focus, the kind that comes from within and doesn't need props, the kind that can sustain itself in any environment because it's not dependent on conditions being perfect. You're giving up resilience, the ability to work, think and function regardless of external circumstances, to be okay when things aren't optimal, to generate attention from your own will instead of borrowing it from your environment. And you're giving up growth, because growth happens in discomfort, in the space between what you can already do and what you're trying to learn. And if you're always using noise to smooth out that discomfort, you never push through it, never expand your capacity. So, what do? How do you break the dependency without falling apart? Slowly, carefully, with awareness of what's actually happening. Start by sitting in silence for just a few minutes, not hours, not even 30 minutes, just 5, just enough to feel the discomfort without being overwhelmed by it. And when the discomfort comes, don't run, don't immediately reach for sound. Just notice it. Watch what happens in your body, in your thoughts, in your urge to escape. The discomfort won't kill you. It won't even hurt you. It's just uncomfortable, like stretching a tight muscle. Unpleasant, but necessary for regaining range of motion. Do this regularly, daily if you can. Let your brain remember what it's like to function without constant input. Let it rebuild the capacity to filter, to focus, to sustain attention on its own. You'll notice things, thoughts you've been avoiding, feelings you've been suppressing, realizations you've been too busy to have. Some of them will be uncomfortable, some will be painful. That's okay. That's the point. You're meeting yourself again, the parts you've been drowning out, with noise, and gradually, over time, silence stops being unbearable. It becomes tolerable, then neutral, then actually pleasant, a place of clarity instead of discomfort, a resource instead of a threat. You'll still be able to work with noise when you choose to, but you won't need it, won't depend on it, won't panic when it's not available. You'll have both options. Noise when it serves you, silence when it serves you. Not because you're trapped in a pattern, but because you're making conscious choices based on what's actually needed. This is freedom, not the freedom to be comfortable all the time, the freedom to function regardless of comfort, to work with what is instead of needing conditions to be perfect. And that freedom comes from one thing: being willing to sit with yourself in silence, without distraction, without the noise you've been using to avoid the meeting. If this video made you realize something about your relationship with silence, write in the comments, "I choose to listen." Write it as your commitment to facing what you've been avoiding. Nobody